over to Ron. Ron, I'm going to make you the presenter, and I'll let you take it away. Again, feel free as we go along through the webinar to ask questions. Send those to me in the chat window. Go ahead, Ron.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. This presentation won't take that long because, as Tony indicated, we're not really looking at workflow process as much as showing you where we're heading for the future and laying the groundwork. So a little background real quick. The reason for this endeavor, as you know, our system's been around now. I originally started as a contractor with Advantzware and took them from the character into the GUI mode that you have been using over the last decade or longer. And so really the push nowadays is for modernization, to get to multiple ways of having different interfaces, particularly browser-based. And that presents a lot of challenges for us as a software company, as a developer that I am, in separating our business logic from the interface. It's intimately tied. Most legacy systems, everybody's going through this exercise at one period or another, and it's really picking up a lot of steam. So for us, we needed to come up with a framework that would allow us the path of least resistance to get to that, because that's a huge endeavor. It's already underway. And this interface allows us to have the least amount of disruption for you, our users, or new potential customers, in that we can present a new interface that allows us to begin to separate the business logic interface, and on the surface, it's a calm duck on the pond, but those legs are flapping underneath that. But that'll be at least not a disruption for you. So what we've painstakingly done, and I'm going to tout my development team on this, is that we have designed this in a way that we have kept our code to a single code base. In other words, you see the same menu that you've always had sitting on your screen, and we will refer to this moving forward as our classic version. So this is Advantzware Classic version 17, and it will begin to, as we make changes and enhancements like we've been doing, you will see that number increment up. So, but because we're going to go with the same code base, regardless of what interface you choose to use, and you can use both. We're going to show you the new in a moment, but you can still stay in the classic. And as we release updates and features, both systems will inherit that, but in reality they're really one. And by doing this, as an end user, you can run the classic if that's what you prefer, or your users can run our new version. And tentatively, I'm referring to it as Advantzware MDI. MDI stands for Multiple Document Interface. So a little bit of a definition there, in that what you're used to is when we run off of the classic, you get your main menu, and then you'll get a separate screen. And on your taskbar, you begin to accumulate all of these various modules that we open. So they're standalone containers. A multiple document interface allows us to have one container with multiple documents. And I'm going to bring up my Outlook real quick. A lot of you should be familiar with it in one form or another. So on the left-hand side, we have a navigation. Outlook has your email there in the center. You have your calendar on the right. I've got a task list on the right bottom. And you have your various tabs and button ribbons up top. And this is the classic multiple document interface. So for some of you that aren't familiar with that, that's what that means, and that's why I'm referring to our new interface as an MDI. It may change names depending on our marketing people or whether they like it or not. I like to have our public generally knowledgeable of these things so that you know what you're using out there. So nothing's changed. This is, in spite of the version number being 16.3.8 on top of my screen, this is actually, will be the version 17 base. And as you see, nothing has changed. It runs exactly as you've seen before. For the new interface, I'm going to start it from scratch because I want to show you the login, which isn't any different than what you've had before. You're going to use your ID, you're going to have your password. There is one extra field on there for future, in that we now have a language that you're going to be able to select. And this may inherit other options as we move forward. We have begun to lay the groundwork. for multi-language support in the future, and you'll be able to select that here and tie it to the user. So for now, we've left on the screen showing you that we're moving forward in that area. I'm going to go ahead and log in. So like the Outlook, you see that on the left-hand side, you now have your menuing system, which is a menu tree. No different than what you've seen in the past. So you see your estimating, order processing, material goods. We've kept it in the same order. Not sure if that's good or bad or whether it's alphabetical or not. But also on the MDI model, we've incorporated the AOA reporting system that I've been developing over the last year. And the add-ons will now be part of the main system. We're going to do away with the concept of having the base system and having the add-ons. It's all one system. Part of this endeavor, you have 7 databases out there that are currently running, 3 under the base and 4 that are part of the add-ons. We are going to eliminate all of that. All of the databases are going to be merged into one database. And then there'll be a second database called the SmartDB, which houses the framework that allows us to run this model, security, the menuing, user IDs, etc. So under the AOA, under the old system, if you were on the menu, you would have used your Alt-Control-R to get your pop-up. And you won't have to do that, as I said, under this. We now have them right here. So if I were to run one of the older, I say older, see, it's kind of funny I say that. I've been developing this last year, so this is our new AOA interface, and I'm referring to it as older already. Geez, time flies. Now under the MDI, it'll be contained within the container instead of a separate pop-up. As you can see on my taskbar, I've got my main menu, I've got my machine file open, I've got my AOA pop-up, I've got my browser screen. Under the MDI, everything's contained within one container. And it still functions as it did under the Classic. So let me open the same machine file that I have on the Classic version running, so we can do a compare and contrast. Let me kill off some of this Classic that I have open. So here you can see, let me minimize my Classic menu, get that out of the way. So now you see a side-by-side of the machine file running in the MDI and the machine file running under Classic. And you can see your ribbon buttons up top. Under the Classic, we have an extra button here for the Excel export that's only associated with this first tab. So under an MDI, we have our buttons that appear as our default here, but then under the browser, because it's only associated with the browser, you see it isolated. And so if I were to click onto the view, we have our panels up top, the navigation panels, and our update transaction panels, and they function as you would expect, except a lot prettier, obviously, with the nice images there. So if I were to do a compare and contrast here, and you can see this is the same code I'm running. So that's the beauty of this from a technical standpoint. For end users, maybe that's no big deal, but for you geeks like me, this is a big deal that we run the same code and yet we can attach images on the fly. And we've gotten all this to work universally. And I'm really proud of the team that worked endlessly to get us this. There are some things, though, that will still function in a sort of pop-up manner that really don't lend themselves to sticking them in the container. For example, on our user-defined fields, we have a pop-up that would come up that stands alone like this, whereas in our MDI, it will function the exact same way, where it will still come up on its own, because this does not lend itself with all these additional tabs that get to find on the fly. So there are a couple of things that will pop up, particularly isolated dialog boxes. So if I was in the Classic mode, over here we have some pop-up dialogs that are unique for just this tab. And so the efficiency by quantity, buttons look the same, save, cancel, and then I can done. And if I were to come here into the MDI, you'll see that their buttons will appear up on the ribbon, but will function the same way. And so this is a pop-up dialog that needs satisfaction before you can move on to any other thing to close it. We will probably make enhancements to these things. One of the things that I did in this particular one was to look at, I really don't like in the new version where we have buttons that don't have images. So on this one in the Classic, you may see changes in the Classic that'll be reflected the same way in the MDI. Just for consistency, because we're moving towards the image and the icon sort of mode. So one of the things I want to do here, one of the benefits of the MDI is to allow you to open multiple things within the same container. So now I have my machine file open, and I have the cost estimating control, and I have my buttons up top now, again on the ribbon. And one of the nice things I can do here is if I right mouse click on the tabs, it asks me if I want to regroup or resort these. So I'm going to say a horizontal. So now I've got my machine file up top, I've got my cost estimating control on the bottom, and I can resize those as I see fit. And right mouse click, and I can move it back to a grouping. I can right mouse click and do a vertical tab. So you can have multiple things open, and you can have them in a side-by-side comparison. You have your item finished goods open, you can have your customer, your vendor. Anytime I can put these back together. The other thing is the menu. I can detach the menu and have it floating as on top. I can resize this a little bit. So these are just some of the new features by moving to this model that allows us to do some of these trickier things that Progress doesn't necessarily lend itself to, by incorporating some .NET objects and other technologies that are available to us out there. So if I want my menu to be on the left-hand side, I can simply drag it over here, click that ventilator, and so now my menu's on the right-hand side. Double-click it and detach it. I can bring it back over here to the left, which is where I'm most comfortable with it. And then one of the other features that we have with the menu is that you have this most recent grouping down below the menu. So what this allows me to do is to see the programs that I've most recently run. So when I exit, it will save it, and it's in the order that I had this. So if I were to close these off, I can simply come to my most recent, and with one click I can get those back open. So it's in lieu of like having maybe a favorite. So as you go through your workflow through the day, if there's 4 or 5 modules that you pretty much live in, once you're in those for the day, you can always just come to your most recent and have quick access, as opposed to having to navigate up and down the menus, which, as you know, we've got a lot of items within our system. If I'm opening all these up, as you can see, it gets pretty extensive and scrolling up and down, depending on your screen resolution. So right now you're seeing this about a month ahead of our release. We're targeting the end of April. April 21st is a tentative date for this release. The nice thing about it, again, that if you were part of the upgrade or get this upgrade, I just keep 2 icons on my desk, and I can run either system simultaneously. So I can have Windows open in my Classic, I can have them open in my MDI, I can do a side-by-side, I can resize this, so I can utilize my screen space. If I have 2 screens, which I do here, which you can't see, so I can obviously drag this off to another screen and have side-by-side. And that's basically the basic functionality of what we're doing and where we're heading. I'll turn it back over to Tony for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ron. I know it was fairly brief, but I think, it shows some pretty powerful features. So I do have a couple of questions. I would encourage everybody to put their questions to the organizers down in the chat box so that we can, do some Q&A here. We have some time, obviously, so let's do that. I had one question. I think you may have answered it already, but let's go back over it just to be sure. It's, the question is, are you able to have two views open at the same time as you can with Classic? So two views of MDI open at the same time.
Well, let's go through that. So I've got my one view here. And I'm the same user, so technically I now have 3 sessions open. I have my Classic and I have 2 MDIs. So really, it works the same way as your other setups worked in that it's going to chew up user licenses. So technically, right now I've got 3 connections going. There is one thing that I did forget to demo, and I'm probably going to get killed for this. So this may be my last broadcast, depending. So and this we worked really hard at. I can't believe I went right through this. So if you notice on here, there is a different look and feel on our browsers, or what we refer to as our data grid. This is a .NET object sitting on here, and what we've done is instituted the ability to filter on any columns that we open up. So in this case, I can filter just on the description for press. And this would be very powerful. This is going to be on all the browsers by default. The other nice thing about these is if I want to group my data by any of these columns, I can simply grab the department code here and drag this up top. And all my data is sorted by groups. So under here, under Department AS, I have 4 records. And you can see it gives you a count. And my filtering is still available. So even though I've grouped it by department, I can still sort it by the press and see that only in the PR department do I have these 4 records for pressing. And then I can put this back and drop and drag this around. I can also sort my columns so you can imagine the dismay of everybody here that I actually forgot to include this as part of my base. So now I'll turn it back over to Tony.
Okay, that's pretty powerful. I like that.
Yeah.
I have another question here for you.
Huh?
Yep. I have another question here for you. Can a user have a favorite menu created so that when they log on, their menus are already open?
That's currently under discussion. As a developer, I would love for us to implement that. We have talked about, by default, as we designed this, we inherited this recent. So the urgency of implementing a predetermined favorites wasn't as pressing for all the items that we had on our list, because if you go into the item once, it'll be under your recent. So in effect, you can create a pseudo favorites by just simply opening that module one time, and then it'll remain in your recents. So I believe that, as the head developer, I'll be pushing for the concept of a favorites, predetermined save, and you can sort and order that. We don't currently have that implemented, obviously. In lieu of that, we have the recent functionality.
Okay, thank you. How does someone choose if they want the Classic versus the MDI version?
We will instantiate 2 icons on your desktop. And so this icon on my desktop opens the Classic that you see right here, and this icon opens the MDI.
Okay.
We had thought about implementing where, in a user file where you sort of have your preference, but then that would, we were trying not to add any additional burden onto our clients by saying, hey, here comes this new update. Now you need to go into your user files and pick a default, or enforcing a default on everybody until they go in and change it. Then having to code the mechanism where people can change that, and then what if they want both? What mechanism do we give for that? And the simplest and least disruptive was to simply create a new icon onto your desktop that would point to the new MDI. And the switching is already set in there. It already has all the coding to start it up properly and let it know that it's in that mode moving forward.
Okay. I think you may have answered this, but a question has come in: is when will the MDI version be available?
Our goal is to release it April 21st, so towards the end of next month. We are 2 weeks out from implementing it at a client site that I pretty much live at here in the Atlanta area. They graciously offer their facilities to us to do our QA testing and our implementations, and so it's smoother for you guys down the road. They're excited because they always get to see things first, and so we have a nice symbiotic relationship and we trade things off. So we're 2 weeks away from probably going over there and implementing that, and then getting any wrinkles ironed out so that when we release it to the rest of you, and it'll come out as our normal release. Right now we have 16.3.8 as our current version. We have a code freeze at the end of this week, and we'll be releasing shortly thereafter 16.4. That'll be our last 16 version, and then any versions after that will be this combined code of version 17. So even if you don't run our MDI, in fact, in the classic mode, the underlying code, you essentially have it.
Excellent. Thank you. Another question here for you, Ron. Can you change the location of the application menu?
Are you referring to this menu here?
I'm just asking the question. If you need clarification, I can ask that person to be more specific. But the question is, can you change the location of the application menu?
Well, I assume we're talking about, I assume we're talking about this guy here. So yes, that's in fact, that's what I've done. I've put this on the right-hand side. I can get it to dock. There we go. And so the application menu is on the right side. I can put it up top. I can put it on bottom. Although the way it opens up in a tree format, top and bottom sort of very difficult to navigate as opposed to either side. And I really don't have to have it anywhere. I can just sort of leave it floating, and just resize it, whatever my particular tastes are.
Nice. So you can basically, each person can kind of put things where they want it, where it makes sense for them.
Mm-hmm.
The people that are dyslexic like me, they could put it on the right side. I have another question here that's along the same lines. The question is, I see a pin on the application menu under Recents on the left side. Can you pin a menu so it's always in shortcuts?
Let's see here. The only pin that I see is this one we have up top here. And what that allows is for the menu to self-hide. So as you can see, as I navigate on and off of it, it will slide into its own tray and self-hide. If I use the pin here, then it keeps it, visible at all times. As far as individual items, I don't see anything where we have the ability to pin these. It sounds like a little bit more like the favorites that we were talking about for future development. If I'm incorrect in that, please clarify what it is you were looking for there.
Okay. All right. Another question here. Are entries into one system also automatically go into the other system?
Yes, absolutely. That you are the same code base and you are connected simultaneously to the two databases. So if I was in this machine file here on this first record, let's see, what can I play with that won't break everything up? So I'll give it 1 hour wash-up hours. So let me close this so I get back into the same order that it was, in case I've sorted it out. And so we see here the wash-up is in fact changed to 1, and I'll put that back to 0. And it says, hey, I got this record locked over here, the infamous lock record. So it recognized that I had the same record. Did the lock not let me change? So this is something you have to be careful with. Obviously, you know how you go around, you got users that have locked up records. You can lock yourself up with these multiple records. Showing 0 there. Still showing the lock. Oh, that's a ref table. That is currently sitting on somebody's desk. We have a coder that's working on these ref table locks for these very collisions. This some stuff, you know, in our modernization effort, some of this stuff is finally coming out where we're able to identify it a lot more readily than we have in the past. The designs that went on and the coding styles back when it was a much smaller application lent itself for folks to get away with a lot of things that they can no longer get away with. There we go.
Yeah, and you know, another question came in along the same lines. Really, why would someone want both versions open at the same time?
Well, that's a good question. Really, the two desktop icons are really more for folks who don't really want to move to the new interface. They're not comfortable with it. You know, plenty of folks we go around don't like change. So you have the ability to do it. It's really just more your own preference. I imagine for some folks they'll simply delete one of those icons off their desktop. You know, I just don't use it. I don't use Classic. You know, I'll be in the new, or I'm never going to the new. I'm staying in the Classic mode.
It's a transition thing, basically. I mean, you'll see.
Yeah, we didn't want to take, you know, we're painstakingly trying not to take things away as we move forward. And that's a harder endeavor than some folks can imagine. So we always have the backward compatibility, and we don't want to shock our users totally. We're trying to keep the workflow such that it doesn't disrupt your lives. I mean, modernization unto itself can be pretty disruptive, particularly when we finally start moving to browser-based interfaces and things. That's a whole other world. You have a much broader breadth of technologies that we can take advantage of, and the look and feel. As many of you know, you go out on the internet and you go to various sites, you see some really cool and exciting features that are out there that we want to move our interface to, but we've got to get our business logic separated from our user interface, and this MDI launches us down that path so that we know that endeavor will be successful. And so we've already started that process, and along the way we are able to offer some of this newer stuff along the way, and to sit there and say, well, let's just wait until we get all of this done A to Z. As you can imagine, this is a huge endeavor to walk through all of our modular functionality. There's some of the things that we can start taking advantage of that we can offer to you, the end users, that are nicer features, particularly the searching and the sorting that you have. You know, we don't have this capability in our Classic model. But we can, by using this MDI, we can take advantage of some of the technologies that are out there, and the ones that make sense and the ones that have, you know, productivity and functionality back to you, the end users. We certainly are going to try and incorporate as many of those as we can along the way.
Okay, Ron, I know we said we were going to try to keep this fairly high level. I don't think we need to do any workflow, but could we get a glimpse of the order entry module?
Yeah, we could try. I went down too far. I'm always down in the file maintenances, right? So here on this particular module, we have not laid the .NET grid. There's some functionality under here that's not compatible with some of the .NET. So we're working through those. We have a checklist. So the ones that aren't 100% compatible, we won't enforce those on you, or you won't inherit those problems. The one we know that if passed testing or they're complied. Your order entry has some custom code underneath, and you still have your functionality up here that you always had before. So you will see over time as releases, you'll see the .NETs popping up in places maybe they weren't previously. Some of our browsers, as you know, are updatable. You know, you actually make the updates within the browser itself. Those don't really lend themselves to modernization. So we are slowly replacing those back to the type of base model where you see the browser and then you'll see a viewer for the actual data. Or, you know, if you update on the browser, you'll get a pop-up that will have the same functionality as a viewer. It depends on the structure, underlying structure of the program, on what method we'll choose there. So I just want to point that out, that in this case the .NET grid is not laying on this. I'd have to go and look at the ticket to see what's blocking that from being implemented at this point, but probably in 2 weeks that one will be taken care of, because order entry is one of our main modules.
Yes, and as I said, you know, today is just really to give people a glimpse of what the navigation is going to look like. We know we still have work to do, so so we'll be flushing that out in the next few weeks.
Yeah, some of these modules may be actually, you know, being worked on right as we speak.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Tony. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to stop on you.
Yeah, no, that's all right. So the next question is, how long do you plan to leave both the classic and the MDI versions available?
We don't have a kill-off date for that. That'll really depend on, you know, where, you know, say version 18 takes us. But out of the box, indefinitely, you know, as long as it's got a shared code base, they will remain. You will have the option for either or. So I have a feeling that this will be around for quite a while. You'll have the option to have both. And if something drastic will, you know, forces us down the road of changing, or you'll have plenty of heads up long before we hit that fork in the road. Our endeavor really, if we have our total wishes from a development standpoint, is that even if we move to another third option, that you would continuously have all of the options available for as long as we can maintain that, as long as it makes sense fiscally, productivity-wise. Our goal would be to always to let you have as many options as we can possibly have.
Okay, another question has come in here. Can you make full-sized screens the default so you don't have to resize different windows? They automatically max out.
In the classic or the MDI? The MDI will always size itself depending on how you have this container. So by default, I have this as maximized. So when I exit it, just like your Outlook or your browsers, however you exit them is how Windows saves that default. So when you noticed I reopened this, it came back at this size because this was the size it was when we got that error and it closed out. If I were to leave this maximized when I leave it, that's what it'll default to. And all of these programs inside take advantage of the full size that it possibly can. Down here on the bottom, it looks like there's a little real estate, but there were some internal things that came with the grid that used to live there that we haven't reclaimed yet. But how it worked in the classic, where the browsers would size up and down and take over the width, if in this particular case we don't have any more columns to the right, So this is as wide as this browser even needs to be. If we had more columns, then it would size out even further. We had the order entry. I can go back to it as long as I don't go into that viewer. And I believe it was wide. So you can see there that it's taking advantage of all that real estate. Now into the classic, you have the ability to do each module where you come into our About box and you set the size. You set this automatic size here. Now again, I got shared code here, but there is a technique that we can drop a file into this users directory here. We see the word no sweat that automatically would maximize every screen that opened if in the classic, so that you didn't have to go through and click on each module that you wanted. I designed that several years back. But what I find is that some modules, people like them to be smaller, and other ones, you know, they like to have bigger real estate. But there is a way, if you want to shoot us an email, that we can tell you what file to put it on there, or we can get on and put it on for you, and all your classic screens would automatically maximize every time you open them. In the MDI, it will automatically always take advantage of all the real estate that you have. So in this case, no matter what size I had it, you know, as I stretch it out, it's trying, as you can see, it's refreshing and it's trying to resize itself based on what I'm doing. You know, it's reactive to what I'm doing here. So, and then there's a minimum size, you know, if you crunch it down. Doesn't make any sense there, but it won't destroy any of your data. And you get the scroll bars, of course, at certain widths. So I got rid of the horizontal there, but if I come back. So again, we can't do this in our classic mode. So one of the other things, moving towards this modern technology lets us do things like this that we've never really been able to do in the past because of restrictions on the progress language in the mode that it was originally designed.
Okay. So I'm looking for some more questions. If you have a question about any of this, go ahead and enter those down in the chat box for me. We're trying to get these answered for you. We appreciate all the questions that have come in. It's great to have this type of interaction. It helps us and helps you. So please enter your questions down in the chat box and we'll get those answered for you. Ron, if you can think of any other features that you may not have shown yet, you can go through those while we're waiting for some more questions. But we'll give it a few minutes here. I'm looking for some questions. So if anybody has a question, just go ahead and type that in. Pretty exciting stuff. It's definitely much more modern and gives you a lot more flexibility. Nice to have everything in one menu. It's one of the first things I noticed. And it's also nice to have the AOA reporting there on the main menu. I think that's going to be an important module. If any of you missed the webinar that we did on AOA, you might want to go back and review that because I think it's a very powerful module that you're going to want as time goes forward. A couple questions here. Let's see here. I think we already answered this, but why would someone want both versions open at the same time? I think we said, you know, it's just a transition thing. You really probably wouldn't want both versions open at the same time. Is that correct, Ron?
It's really a preference. You can have them. You have the ability to have them. I'm not sure. Again, I think I'm with the questioner. There's like, why would I want both of them? I can't really give a good in-house process why you would do that, but you certainly have the ability. And it was important to us and to the new ownership that we have the ability to run it in Classic or with the MDI.
Right. Okay. And just to recap timing again, I think we said this would be available. Our target date is April 21st. Is that correct?
That is the timetable that we're currently under. We're finishing up the last of some of the cleanup that you've seen, or some of the items that popped up today. We're in that mop-up mode. We're 2 weeks away from installing it at one of our beta test sites, and then it'll be released a few weeks after that.
Perfect. Thank you. Question is, and I can probably answer this, is this a paid upgrade? And the answer to that, yeah, this is included in the monthly support that you pay. There's no charge for this upgrade. This is why you pay your support, because we're constantly doing new development like this and bringing it to you. So there's no charge for this upgrade. It's a free upgrade as part of your annual support. Had another question from a new customer that just are getting started on Advantzware. They're wondering if they should just train specifically on the new version. So I think that's a question that you would want to talk to our implementation manager about as we move forward on that. But it might make sense from my perspective. But again, you have the option to do both, and sometimes it might be good to, if you train on one, you're probably going to, understand the other as well. They both operate from the same code base. So the functions are basically the same. It's just really the navigation.
Correct, and that's really the only difference. Workflow will remain the same. It really is just a navigation of the user interface, and we feel like we've minimized that even, to a degree. We haven't taken any of the functionality up top from any of the tabs or any of the modules. You just have the bigger icons with the prettier pictures. I personally like this MDI. In all of our other applications in the world, I'm living out here in Outlook, I'm living in Excel, and they all are designed on this type of technology and design. So it really flows a little more with a lot of the other Windows functionality that you may be utilizing in your third-party applications.
Excellent. And I had one participant said this is the coolest thing since sliced bread, so we're happy to hear that. We're excited about it. So again, we thank everybody for attending.
The next version, we're going to try and get you some butter. So,
bread and butter, bread and butter. Any other questions? Just type those in down in the chat box. We're going to answer any other ones, and then we'll wrap up. Coming up on nearly an hour. So we appreciate the feedback and the interaction. We want to make this a good experience for everyone. So if you do have any kind of questions, just type them in. Give it a couple minutes here. Anything else on the menu that we should talk about, Ron?
Nothing that I could think of. I haven't forgotten anything, as big as the sorting here in the new .NET group. But other than that, no.
On the application menu, all those options on the application menu are also options in the Classic. Is that correct? Is there anything new other than AOA and add-on? All those other ones are like the EDI. All that's available in the Classic.
The biggest change, underneath the hood, your databases are all being merged into one, so that you don't have all these other. And there's pros and cons to both those. As we move into utilizing some of the third-party reporting tools, whether it be Crystal Reports or our, Advantzware Open Analytics, having everything reside in one database should make navigating through that and linking up related records. Like if you have touchscreen or you have some of the add-ons, those were always intricately linked back to the main database anyway. But if you were making third-party apps or trying to make those connections, you had to have both databases open. You had to create the connections. Now all that resides in one place. So that should be a lot easier for folks that go down that road. And then having the same code base, we're not filling up your drives with even a second copy of the code base or a second repository. That was important to us, that we didn't go having two code bases that we're trying to maintain, so that maybe create an issue, or an issue creates in Classic but it runs in the MDI, and so what's the difference? And from a debugging and a support standpoint, or having clients call us and say, well, it works over here, but it doesn't work over here, and making it look like there's some inconsistencies going on there. So, like I said, we went through great pains to make sure that we kept this the same code base and giving you options. And as we move on, we're going to follow that path of design.
Mm-hmm. And I think from a reporting standpoint, having everything in one database should make custom reporting more readily available and easy. So exciting stuff. I guess I don't have any other questions, Ron. So if someone has a question, please type it in. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and call this today. Again, I want to thank everybody. I do usually like to offer an incentive for people that attend our webinar. So since we're talking about user interface here, I'm going to offer a 20% discount on any new users that you might want to buy for your system. So if you're in need of new users, if you're hitting your limit, if you need to buy some more users, you can buy those 1, 2, 3 at a time, whatever you like. Send me an email or give me a call, and I'll get you a 20% discount on your users going forward. So that's my incentive for today. Appreciate everybody attending. Love to have your feedback. If you have some feedback, if you have any questions, concerns, be sure to send those to me, and we will make sure we get those taken care of for you. So that's it for today. Thank you very much for attending, and we will be talking to you soon. Our next webinar will be coming up. I'll send out an announcement on that. We'll have, we have a lot of webinars coming up this year. Some of them will be basic training, some of them will be advanced training, and some of them will be like these, new modules, new users, because we're going to be constantly moving things forward for you. So thanks again for attending. I'm going to go